All right, it is time for our March quarterly meeting. And I am going to start off by talking about our MAS FPS Spring Professional Learning Institute. As you know, Amber and I are both on the Professional Learning Committee for MAS FPS. And MAS FPS is the professional learning organization for people in our positions. So anybody that works with state and federal programs, whether that's teachers or curriculum directors, um, business officials, superintendents. It is basically the only way that you can get great PD about the things that concern us. And I really wanted to put a plug in for it today because everything that we're going to talk about as important today in our time together is all being covered in great detail at the conference this year. Just wanted to pop down to a quick conference overview. We have as usual on day one, we have our keynote from with the lawyers from Washington, D.C. So Bonnie is going to be there from the Brewman Group. And I don't think you need me to tell you that this is a great time to be staying on top of what's going on in budgets and those sorts of things. Bonnie's going to be there. It's always great. And I think that the one that she did in the fall and this one are going to be especially important to be paying attention to. We are going to have general sessions that day. One of them is going to be a combined presentation with Dot Blackwell from the Continuous Improvement team and Frank Holes, who's part of the Office of Educational Supports. And they're really going to be getting into how we can use some new tools within and outside of MyKIP to hopefully streamline some of the things that we must do, right? So we have to have continuous improvement plans. We need to monitor our plans. We need to show that we have comprehensive needs assessments. And I think we've talked with this group before that MyKIP doesn't cover all of those things that might be important for an on-site review. Dot and Frank are going to be there co-presenting and talking about some new tools that they developed and talk about the things that MyKIP can help with, and then talk about some of the things that it does not specifically cover for on-site reviews and what some of these new tools might be able to do to help with that. So I think it's going to be a really great session. We will have a state updates with Kevin Walters. So Kevin is our guru for the whole state on the budgets and grants. He's the grants manager for the grants division at Michigan Department of Education. And so he is a great resource and always entertaining as well. So day one is going to be pretty packed. It's all keynotes and general sessions. Day two, we are continuing some learning that we've been doing at our conferences on the future of learning. At our last conference in the fall, we really dug into what's kind of the status around the future of learning. What are some other states doing to make changes to education and to try to kind of modernize things? And so great presentation there. This time we're going to be really focusing in on Michigan. And so we have Dr. Dave Richards is going to be there and Jennifer Anderson. So really looking forward to that. If any of you are working with the Future Learning Council, I'm sure you're familiar with Dave and Jennifer. So excited to have them there. And then in the afternoon, we are going to be doing some breakouts. If you remember from our last time together in January for our quarterly meeting, I asked this group, what are some of the things that are kind of on our radar that we are wondering about that are maybe some hot topics that we'd like to get some presentations on. And so we were able to actually work in the two ideas that came up from this group. One was that folks really wanted to hear more about 31A and some of the updates to 31A. We're going to talk a little bit about that today, but Dawn Carmody is going to be there. We think that's probably going to be a pretty popular session, so she's going to do it twice, so that you can still make it to other breakouts and not just pack into her one breakout. We have a Title I 101. Andrea Rogers from Team 2 is going to be there. And then a really great presentation on Title III and Section 41. Kristen did a similar presentation at our fall conference, and it was packed. And so I think that she has some updates to that. Kind of working off of that, Future Learning Council, student-centered education. Rochelle Bowerman's going to be there to talk about MMC and PC flexibility. And I really challenged her to really dig into some of the specifics and some of the details about what districts can do. I think many of us have heard, like, here's what you can do. And so what we asked her to do is really bring some solid examples and some exemplar districts about where these things are happening. Um, and then we have a really nice follow-up to our general session with the continuous improvement on day one. Rebecca Atkins from Fitzgerald is going to be there to talk about collaborative approaches to continuous improvement. I think that's going to be a really great presentation. The one that came out of this group is a technical update on 146, 147. So that's the dyslexia law. And the state's really been leaning into the learning about dyslexia portion of the law, and things have been pretty light on the details. There's lots of things that are out there. We shared them at our last meeting that dig into what the legislation says, but there hasn't been a lot of guidance from MDE about that. And so a lot of those things are going into place next year or even the year after. And so we're hoping to get some technical guidance from the MDE literacy team. And then finally, working with private schools, Dr. de Guzman, she's our MDE ombudsman, is going to be there to do some breakouts on private schools. So always an interesting topic, one of those things that can be all-consuming for us. And so having good guidance about that's important. So a lot of these things we're going to be talking about in, pretty briefly today, kind of going over a few resources and a few reminders, but all of those things are going to be really dug into in depth at our conference. And so I'm really encourage everybody to sign up to make sure that you share this with other people back in the district that might be important for them to attend as well. This is, like I talked about earlier, this is kind of the only way that we can get this kind of deep learning and professional development and networking with people that are in roles like ours. So very highly recommend everybody sign up for that. Amber, anything that you might add about that?
No, it's going to be a great conference like always.
All right, so the registration link is right there. So, Crown Plaza, it's at the Crown Plaza in Lansing. So all of our spring conferences are at the Crown Plaza and our fall conferences are at Weber's in Ann Arbor. Okay, so with that done, I'm going to try to refrain from saying the whole rest of the time, if you come to the conference, we're going to dig into more detail about this topic. So I'm going to try to refrain from that and hope that our conversation here at the start kind of covers that for the rest of the topics we're going to talk about today. All right, so hot topics, budget processes happening at the state and the federal level. Um, I don't have any like particular expertise in this area, so I've just been trying to gather some information. I'm sure there are other people on the call that have a better grasp of the budget process, timelines, how the inner workings work, and all those sorts of things. So if anybody has anything to add to this, or some information that you think would clarify or fix anything that I say, please don't hesitate to unmute. Part of the strength of this group is that we have a lot of diverse roles in this group. So if there's something here that I'm not hitting quite right or I'm missing anything, please make sure to fill in the blanks for me. To start things off, I do have a recent presentation from Kevin Walters. So he did this with the My Alliance this month. And so I'm not going to actually go through the presentation because he just gives some detail to some of the things that I'm going to talk about. I think, some of the continued reworking, I guess is the word, of the Department of Education is in here about where some of the programs are going to be picked up by other departments and things like that. But again, I want to put this more in here as reference. I'm going to cover a few of the highlights, and then you're welcome to come back to the presentation for more details. So I just want to have that there more as reference. So as far as the state goes, the governor's proposal is released. And so the actual K-12 portion, this is just an overview of it, so it's not the full written proposal. But if you go to page 4 on here, that digs into specifically what the governor's proposal is for the budget. And just to hit a couple of the highlights, what I put here is that her proposal is a 2.5% increase to our foundation allowance. So if you're getting the base foundation, that would put us at 10,300 per student. And other parts of the budget is that we want to continue free school meals for all of our students. And then this one was a little foggy to me. Maybe somebody knows some more detail to this, but in her proposal, it says a 6% increase for disadvantaged students. And I think what that means is a combination of 31A, Section 41, some of the other at-risk type funding that goes to special populations. If somebody has more information about that, I'd love to know if I'm on or off about that. Um, Really, 31A has kind of been used as that spot to try to get funding to districts that have varying needs. The way we'll talk a little bit more about 31A later, but the way that the funding changed with the opportunity index zones and things like that. So it's kind of 31A has been used as a way to kind of equalize out payments, especially for districts that have, significantly higher foundation allowances. They don't get as much 31A, things like that. So I think that's about 31A and some other at-risk funding. And then universal free pre-kindergarten, so preschool is still getting pretty broad bipartisan support. So those are kind of the highlights from our budget. There's again some more detail in Kevin's presentation, and then you're welcome to take a look at that proposal. It goes a little bit into more detail there. So kind of the way that the state budget works is there's a revenue estimating conference where there's several of them throughout the year, but there's one that's held pretty early in the year. And that is kind of used as a jumping off point for the governor to put out a proposal to say, this is how I think the state budget should go. But then the House does the same thing, and then the Senate does the same thing. So you end up with 3 proposals. Sometimes there's things you can look at it and see if all 3 things are aligned, or 2 of the places, 2 of the parties are aligned. You can be like, well, I think that's probably going to be something that looks like what's in the proposal. But then there's a lot of things that are way off. And between now and theoretically July 1st is when all of that starts to get hashed out. House and Senate have not put out their budget proposals yet, so I would anticipate that those would come up pretty soon. And then there will be all the kind of that political wrangling to try to come to one consolidated budget. And so the statutory deadline for that to happen is July 1. As we saw this year, that did not happen. So we got all the way into October and the government shut down and things like that. So it's not a given that they're going to be able to hash all that out. But the statutory deadline is to get that done by July 1 so that they can put those new laws in effect on October 1st. And we've seen this year what some of the fallout is if the government is not able to get that done by July 1 and it pushes all the way into October just to get the law passed, then it's a huge scramble to try to put any of the pieces in place because if it passed in July, people can start getting ready. MDE can start doing the grant making process and assigning it to managers and things, those sorts of things. And if it doesn't even pass until October, they're missing out on, 4 or more months of trying to, get ready for it. So anyway, that's kind of what's going on with the budget. Anybody here that's like a real like budget watcher that really is interested in state government and how the things work and how the different pieces work together to bring the budget together, or have any insider information? Anybody want to unmute and talk a little bit more about that? Like I said, I'm pretty lay in my understanding of everything. Stacy?
Hey, Dave. This is something that's on the radar of business managers around the state. So they are talking about giving us our increase, which is 10,300 base foundation. And then they're talking about giving us a weighted additional per pupil allocation based on our 31A and section 41. So basically what they're talking about in the governor's proposal is giving us all the money that we usually get for 31A and section 41 and just giving it to us and allowing us to support our district as we best see fit. Now, this goes against everything we've ever known historically, right? These funds are highly regulated. We have to track these funds. We have to make sure we're supplementing, not supplanting
Yep.
our pre and post outcomes. We track everything, we report everything. So we're all a little leery that they're really just going to give us this money and that our reporting requirements are going to relax a bit. But this is kind of on the radar, and we've asked numerous people, numerous legislators, and they say this is the intent of the language that she has in the bill.
So clarification. So instead of those being supplemental, are they still going to come as 31A in section 41, or are they going to just get like roped into the foundation, or is it going to be something new? And this is, of course, just the governor's proposal, everybody.
Yeah, so we don't want to get too excited. This is just the governor's proposal. There's a lot of unknowns. From what we are hearing, that 10,300 is going to be your one line item, but then these additional funds are going to come to us. Not sure if it's still going to be on your state aid status report as 31A or as section 41, or if it's just going to be some kind of block grant. We're not sure what that looks like.
Okay. Interesting. So that's a little bit more detail about that 6% increase for disadvantaged students piece, I think yeah. So, okay. Well, that'll be something to keep an eye on, won't it? um, so I was just getting a few texts that people are hearing the same sorts of things from other avenues around the state. So yeah, that's interesting. So I would think that this is just because this is the first time I'm hearing this, so like my wheels are turning on that. I would think that especially for some of I'm not sure what other pieces might be roped into it, but I'm hearing section 41, if that just gets roped into a block grant, I mean, I might be concerned that those funds wouldn't go to their intended purpose of helping our English learners. So I don't know. I'm not sure what other pieces might be wrapped into that. So, okay. Well, we're definitely going to keep our eye on that. Kevin Walters, I said I wasn't going to do this, but I'm going to. Kevin's going to be at our conference. So if he doesn't bring that up, I'm sure somebody can ask a question from the audience. So yeah, that's an interesting one. Anybody else? Anything else that anybody else have any clarifications or anything else that anybody's been hearing or following? Okay. So I'm gonna go off of our typical topic slightly for this next one. So there is this HB 5697 is just a House bill as of now, but this is about literacy, and it's kind of taking the letters training idea and turning it from, hey, this is something you can do, to everyone will be required. Anybody that teaches literacy will be required to take the letters training. And I can appreciate why there's concern about it. So just snipped a little screenshot in here. So this is the statewide percent proficient of our third graders in ELA. And so some of us have been around long enough to remember that something happened in the 2016-17 school year. The Read by Grade 3 law was passed, and you can pretty much draw a downward line from there. So, literacy is a big concern. It's gone down for our state for many years. And so, there's always kind of this scramble to try to do things about that. And so we had the Read by Grade 3 law. Coaching was passed. We were able to fund for coaches, early literacy coaches in our districts. They've revamped that with the dyslexia law. So the dyslexia law is basically a reauthoring or a reimagining of the Read by Grade 3 law. They've had that letters training option for districts for several years now. And so this isn't me saying that the letters training isn't bad or couldn't be effective. I went through the letters training for administrators, and I thought it was really great. I thought it was great learning, and I think everything about it was pretty great, and everything that I've heard about any of the teachers that have been through it, they've thought that it's been pretty good too. But I wanted to kind of talk about this graphic from the National Implementation Research Network. And apologies to anybody in the Muskegon ISD. This is in all of my presentations, so you're like, oh my God, not that multiplication problem again. But basically, what they're by mandating some sort of PD for the whole state, they're really trying to kind of work on this effective practice piece. They're trying to say, hey, if we can really teach reading really well, then this situation is going to turn around. And so effective practice means your instruction routines, your practices, how you're collaborating, things like that, right? And so all the stuff that Letters really digs into. Um, Letters isn't specific to any one kind of program. And I think they do a pretty good job of trying to lean into this implementation side too. But if I read the bill correctly, they are not mandating letters for administrators. And so you're really by only mandating it for the people that are going to be teaching reading, you're leaving out two pieces of the multiplication problem, the effective implementation and the enabling context. And if you just focus on the practice without also focusing on that effective implementation and the enabling context, then you're not going to have the desired result. Is essentially the premise of this multiplication problem. So, policy tools can definitely push things, but it's really hard to implement something at a large scale. And so I'm guess I'm concerned that the state is going to be spending untold amount of money on getting all our teachers trained in this, but our administrators aren't going to get trained in it. And I don't know that maybe there's some folks that are more involved in the uh, like the 35A coaching network and things like that. But I don't know that our coaches are going to be instructed then I mean, I don't think there's a way to even do that because it's a pretty decentralized system to coach around this because once you get instruction on how to put something in place, you must have ongoing professional learning, coaching, monitoring of the system, all those sorts of things. And so really the only thing that's being legislatively mandated right now is the teachers getting training. So that means the administrators aren't getting training, that there's not a aligned coaching system that would go along with it. And then because this is a budgetary thing and we've seen the winds blow, we have no idea about the enabling context for that. So is this going to be a long-term commitment? I mean, you need to commit to like 7 to 10 years for something like this. And it's very rare to see something like that come out of the legislature. So I'm a little concerned about it. I'm concerned about the amount of funding that's going to be spent on it. Um, and yeah, so it's just something that I'm keeping my eye on right now. It wouldn't surprise me if it passes, because I mean, it'd be a really bad look for a senator to say, well, I don't think that we should help the kids learn how to read. So yeah. So hold on, I just got a direct message. I want to read this real quick and then see if it's something that we want to talk about with the whole group. Amber, do you mind unmuting and maybe just talking about what you just messaged me about just a little bit? This is Amber White, not Amber Kowach.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I just put my background, I was a reading specialist I'm still a reading specialist, but I'm a curriculum director now. So things with literacy I follow and quite closely. I was actually trained by Letters by Louisa Moats back in the day, which they say the pendulum comes back. That's so true. Anita Archer, all that stuff. We had it
Yeah.
years and years ago. It's really great training, but even with my background, the 168 hours for teachers to complete, where we have other district continuous improvement initiatives, I just think we need to push and think about other ways that this could be accomplished. So one thing I think about is the reading certification requirement for new teachers in a reading coursework. Maybe giving people a window or teachers time. It's great training, but just to me, far too many unknowns. I know there's hearings going on, so giving feedback. I think DeBoer was one of them. Kelly had something out there, representative. So if you can push and you have any thoughts on that, I think it's really important that I think there's really good intentions there. There's no sinister, I
Right.
think we can all get
Absolutely.
yeah, yeah. But even with my background, I raise my eyebrow. I mean, there's quite a few unknowns, and I, I don't know. I think that could be really challenging with other initiatives and things going on that you also need to, what consumes your thoughts controls your eyes. So if you're not still working on initiatives for math, or if you're doing problem-based learning or other spaces, or if they have to do this on their own, they're talking about stipends. I mean, I saw figures anywhere from 1685 to up to $3,000 per educator, reaching a funding cliff. We're talking about budgeting. We definitely got to do something, but I just think thinking more thoughtfully how this could be handled is just very interesting.
Yeah, thanks, Amber. I mean, you're totally hitting on what my concerns about it were. Again, I totally agree. There's no nefarious purposes to this. And it's just, I'm a little concerned about it. In this area is an area of interest of mine. My dissertation was in the implementation of the 35A, specifically the early literacy coaching portion of that. And I did some additional research for MESA with Dr. Lallier. And so like I don't know, like I'm just I'm a little concerned about it. It's on my radar. And I thought, I don't know, maybe this group would be interesting in engaging a little conversation about it. So like I said, it's a little off topic for our normal conversations, but could definitely have some pretty big implications, as I think Amber did a nice job of pointing those out. Any other thoughts on that one? Or are we ready to talk about the federal budget a little bit? All right. Moving on to federal budget. So our current year budget, the FY26 federal budget, ended up getting signed into law February 3rd. That is again back to it. That should have happened on October 1, 2025. I think we're all really well aware of the government shutdowns and deal making and extensions, et cetera, that kind of went along with that. So I want to talk a little bit about what was passed. It was shortly after our last meeting. So I'm just going to pop down to that. So I want to say that the federal government is a look forward budget. And so what they passed for this has implications for what is going to be put in place next year. So it's not like they passed this and and now we're like, oh my gosh, now we have no idea what we're going to do this year. And so this is what they call a look forward budget. And so there was all kinds of talk about like we're going to eliminate a bunch of grants. We're going to eliminate Title II, Title III. We're going to turn those into block grants. Everybody remember those conversations? And at first it was like, well, that kind of sounds maybe interesting. But if they would have kept the funding flat, we could have had we would have had more decision making and more choices that we could have made about how those funds were used, either at the state level or the local level. But the whole premise was of making those block grants was to say the states should control how the funding is being done, not the federal government. It's like, okay, maybe I could get behind that. Tell me more. And tell me more was, and we're going to reduce it by 2/3. I can't really get behind that. So anyway, long story short, that didn't happen. So again, this is what passed at the beginning of February. Title I, we saw a slight increase. And that 20 million increase is not what we would usually anticipate. We usually want a lot more than that. But it was quite a bit better than the $4.7 billion cut that was proposed. I guess we'll take that as a win. IDEA, also a $20 million increase, also smaller than what we might anticipate. CTE is one of those things that right now is getting bipartisan support at the state and the local, or I should say the state and the federal level. And so that was funded at 1.45 billion. Adult ed, this was one of those things that was supposed to just get cut outright, but it was not. It was funded. And then, like we talked about, Title II and III, those are going to be put into some sort of block grant with some other pieces, were some of the proposals, and that did not happen. They came out at pretty much flat funding. So really, we can kind of anticipate probably pretty flat funding for everything. Title I did get that slight increase, but I don't know how much of that is going to end up with only $20 million to spread across every state and every school district in the entire country. I don't know that that's going to look like any kind of practical increase for anybody. And then Title II and III is flat. So that is kind of a piece of the puzzle for our funding coming up for our consolidated applications that we're going to start working on whenever they open up. Like I mentioned, this is that look forward budget. So that funding that was passed in February goes into effect for the 26-27 school year. So this is the time of year that the presidential budget, so just like our governor released a budget, the president also releases a budget, and it goes through a similar process at the federal level. It's a little bit more complex with some different layers, but so that FY27 presidential budget has not been released yet. There's a statutory deadline for that in February, but it's very typical for presidents to miss that. So we'll see if that comes out here at the end of March or maybe in early April. Like I mentioned, the processes are kind of similar between the state and the federal government, and we do have that fiscal cliff of October 1. So those are all things to be kind of looking out for. Before I get in, I want to talk a little bit about census poverty and Title I, but similar to my question around state government, state budgets, is there anybody that has anything that I missed or any clarifications or any other information that might be beneficial for the group? Okay, hearing none. I wanted to talk a little bit in this section, since we're talking about funding and it's looking like the funding is going to be kind of flat moving forward, that funding coming out from the federal government or coming into the state. So the way then that translates from the state gets this block of money to how much money is my district going to get. One of the pieces to that puzzle comes out in this memo that was released after our last meeting. So at our last meeting was in January. And so this memo came out a few weeks after that meeting. And I wanted to just explain a little bit about what this memo is. I'm not sure that people pay too much attention to it and things like that. So on February 9th, this memo came out, and it comes out every year. It usually comes out the last week of January or the first couple weeks of February. And it's always about the previous year census data. So we're in the 25-26 data. And so they use 2024 census data then to help to figure out how much our allocations are going to be for next year. Okay, so we're in 25-26. They use the 2024 census data to help figure out how much Title I we're going to get in 2026-2027. Hopefully that is, I'm not going to say it doesn't make sense, but is comprehensible. Oh, Michelle, we're going to talk about that. I just got a message from somebody saying they tried to challenge this information, got nowhere. I have stories about that. So anyway, this comes out and it says, hey, take a look at your census data, and because this is going to determine how much Title I funding you get. And when you look at the census data, which I have linked here, so I put in the one that just got released in February as the 2024 data. And then I also put last year's on there. So that would be 2023's data. And so what my recommendation is that you open this up, you find your school district, and then you compare the census age poverty here with between the 2 years. So open up 2024, open up 2025. And it's going to say, it'll show you what the poverty is and then what your percentage is. And the reason I want to talk about this is because if you were to come in here and look at this, so let's just, I'm going to pick on Ann Arbor. This says that 7.52% of their school-aged children are in poverty. I am positive that if somebody was here from Ann Arbor, they would say, that's not true. Because look at our free and reduced lunch counts. Our free and reduced lunch counts are at whatever it is for Ann Arbor, 50%, 60%, whatever it is. That is not what this is all about. So what they do is every 10 years, so 2020 was the last time this happened, every 10 years we take the census around the whole country. And one of the things that comes out of this is how many people in poverty live in communities. And so that is what is used to determine how much Title I funding we get, not our free and reduced lunch counts. Obviously we don't take the census every year. So what the Census Bureau does is they run an algorithm, and that algorithm says, if we were to take the census this year, this is how many people in poverty we predict would be in your school district. And that's what these are spreadsheets are all about. So there's an algorithm that's run and it predicts how many people in poverty live in your school district. And then they use that number as part of their funding calculation to provide, to figure out our allocations for Title I. So usually what I like to do is to take a look at this and just see, is this number going up or down over time? If the number is lower than it was last year, then you can expect that overall that's going to have a negative impact on your funding situation for Title I. I'm not going to say that your Title I will go down because, the money might come in higher, but so yeah. So just take a look at it. If the numbers go down, it might have a negative impact. If the number is going up, it might have a positive impact. And then the other part of this is that this does have an impact on what parts of the Title I grant you might be eligible to receive. So there's 3 parts to the grant, and 2 of them depend on what you're like. If you're below a certain poverty percentage, you are not even eligible to get those portions of the grant, and so that could have a more significant impact on it. So I just heard from somebody that said that they couldn't access 2023. Let me check my sharing settings. Oh, look at that. It's restricted. Okay, if you were trying to do that comparison that I was recommending everybody do, you should now be able to do that. Yeah. Now, I'm not going to go into like a ton of detail. My recommendation is to just open that up, compare the two, look at your percentages. If they went down, that's going to have a certain level of impact. If they went up, it's going to have a certain level of impact. You can watch this video that I have in here. It's a few years old now, but I think it's still applicable. It kind of explains how the Title I formula is made and what hold harmless means and how the percentages impact the different parts of the funding. So I recommend taking a look at that. It's pretty short. And then there's a document here from MDE that gives you some more detail. So here's the 3 parts that make up your Title I grant. There's the basic portion, and then you may also get concentration grant. You may also get EFIG, but it really depends on some different things. So you can see where if that poverty count on those spreadsheets is below a certain number, then you're not going to have access to some parts of the grant, no matter what your free or reduced lunch counts say. So I want to go back to Michelle had texted me, did a direct. She said, we tried to challenge information last year and got absolutely nowhere. So if you read the memo, there's a thing in there that says, do I still have this memo open? No. Yeah. Where does it say it in here? Let's see, include your name. Oh, if you believe the census estimates are incorrect, please contact the Census Bureau directly to obtain information about how to challenge the data by calling this number or emailing this person. So what I've found through trying to work with districts to resolve what we saw were perceived inaccuracies in the past is the only thing that they will accept a challenge on is how your district boundaries are drawn. So they will not listen to anything that you have to say about the percentages. You'd be like, look, we have 90% free and reduced lunch. Why are you saying that we have 10% of our students are in poverty? They won't listen to any of that. But they will listen if you show them their map, which is linked in here, and say right here, the school district map. If their school district boundary map is drawn incorrectly, they will listen to you and they will recalculate it. So a couple of pieces to the federal puzzle there. We can see that our funding is pretty flat, at least it didn't go down from the FY26 budget that was released. That's going to be our funding for 26, 27. Then you can take a look at, so that piece of it is saying the funding coming out of the federal government and coming to the states is flat to fairly flat. Then this is how that comes from the state to our locals, is looking at these spreadsheets and seeing the percentages there. So this is the time of year that I know people are starting to think about budgets. They're starting to think about next year. They're starting to think about what is the funding going to look like. So hopefully this gives a little bit of extra information that you might be able to bring to your administrative meetings or kind of put into your calculations as you're getting ready to start thinking about budgets and thinking about planning for next year. I did not see any other questions or information that hasn't been addressed come through the chat. But before we move into or out of this first section, just wanted to check to see if there's anything that anybody needed or wanted to bring up about any of this before we move on. Okay, so in the vein of planning for next year, there is no news on when our preliminary allocations are going to come out. And we don't have a timeline for the consolidated application. So I was talking to somebody the other day and I was like, oh yeah, this is, usually we would get our preliminary allocations in March or maybe April. And then the consolidated applications were due on July 1. And this person was like, what are you even talking about? And then it just made me realize that we haven't lived in a normal world from that perspective since the 2018-2019 school year. So the last time that anything functioned on what we would consider the correct timeline was 2018-2019. So that was a little mind-blowing for me, just to know how and see how many people that work in these positions now, whether it's a business official or a program person, that have never operated under a normal, like what we would consider to be normal circumstances. Yeah, that's really something. And so I wouldn't expect that this year would be any different. I would expect that the allocations are going to come out later and that our consolidated application timelines are going to get pushed back past July 1. But we'll see. Maybe this will be the year that we're able to return to some sort of normalcy, but I'm not holding my breath on that. So right now they are testing Nexus. So Office of Educational Services is testing Nexus out, and reportedly it's going well. Spring Workshop is going to be focused on using Nexus. Sometimes they kind of get into some other topics, but they're really going to be focused just on the consolidated application this year, using Nexus, things like that. So they'll be able to go over any of the changes or, anything that's changed in the law, anything that's changed in how Nexus works. That's all going to be done at the Spring Workshop. We'll talk. That's a I have some of our dates for spring workshop that I'll talk about here in a few minutes. Um, since we're just talking about consolidated application, I wanted to mention that there are 5 OES field consultant job postings open right now. So I'm in the team 2 area. So there's somebody open in team 2. There's 2 in team 3 and 2 in team 5. So I put the map in here so you can kind of you can see what that means. They want you to, oh gosh, I don't remember the rules on this. I can't remember if you have to live in that region or bordering it. I can't remember what the rule is, but there's some sort of like a rule that you need to either live in it or near it from the last that I remember. But team 2 is here in the southwest corner of the state. Team 3 goes straight all the way across. It goes all the way into the Thumb area. Team 5 is the Detroit area. So if you live in any of those areas and are maybe considering a career change of sorts, or you're nearing retirement, I would highly recommend that you apply for that because we need good people in those positions. So I think they've been doing a really good job with their hiring recently. Any of the new consultants that I've worked with have been really sharp. Um, so please consider that. I wanted to talk about these two things are going to kind of bleed together a little bit. This is the time of year that I looked back and as I was making the agenda for today, I looked at last year's agenda. I was like, oh wow, I talked about that this last year this time too. So um, this is the time that we should be gathering the information that we need to be able to put our plans into place for next year. And so we are supposed to, for all of our federal funds, so that is our Title I, 2, 3, 4, we are supposed to get stakeholder involvement about how those funds are spent. And so that means talking to your school community about how much money you get for Title I and what are the ways that they're using it. And do we think that maybe we should transfer Title IV into Title I because that'll give us more money to help with our interventionists? Whatever your ideas are, you're supposed to get stakeholder involvement on that. And stakeholder involvement means your staff and your parents, and especially your parents that have students that are benefiting from those programs. So if we're talking about Title III, you're supposed to be getting input from your parents of your English learners. If you're talking about Title I, you're supposed to be getting input from your students that are in your Title I program. So this is the time of year we're supposed to be getting involvement with them because we're going to start making plans, and all of these require, it's not just a good idea, they require that we get stakeholder involvement. That's it's written right in the law, and that will be checked when you have an on-site review. And so I sit in on lots of on-site reviews. I sit in on every on-site review in Muskegon and Ottawa counties. And this is a place that everybody stumbles. It's hard to do. So just would challenge everybody to think of creative ways to do that. You can have meetings. You can use your annual Title I parent meeting for that. You can survey your school community. You can put right in there, here's how much money we get from these different grants. Here are some of the ways that we're planning on spending it. What input do you have? So there's a lot of different ways to do it. You can have parents and staff, of course, on your district improvement team or your school improvement teams where you can have conversations about this. So there are a lot of ways to do it, but I find that most districts struggle with this. So that's just kind of a reminder to make sure that you're getting stakeholder involvement as you're moving into this planning phase for next year. I also want to talk about program evaluation just a little bit. So we all know that we have to evaluate the way that we're spending our federal programs, especially, but our state programs as well. That we need to evaluate the implementation of our continuous improvement plan. This is one area where that I think Dot and Frank are going to address at our conference. But just by completing the MyKIP process, that's not adequate to evaluate all of your federal funding. Really what you need to be doing for your federal funding, and this is a good time of year to start thinking about this, is looking at the ways that you're spending all of your federal dollars and just simply asking the question, is this working for us? And do we want to continue spending the money this way? If you are able to do that, then you're in pretty good shape. You're able to say, well, we spend our Title II dollars on coaches at our elementary buildings. Okay, is that working for us? Okay, do we want to continue doing that? We're supposed to do that for how we're spending all of our federal funding every year. And I know that can get pretty complex at some districts. I have a couple of samples. I'm not going to go into them too much. I think I've shared them here with this group before. But I have samples in here about ways that you can kind of track this by funding source, and for you to just be able to answer some questions, or to answer the question, how did we even monitor this? How did we track that we asked that question about, is this working for us? Do we want to continue? So I have a couple of samples of some ways that I've worked with some districts to set that up before. So, and this is all about budget stuff, right? If you're looking at something and you want to continue it, then that's something that you're going to want to put in your budget next year. So does it fit in the budget? If you have something new that you want to put in there, then you should be looking at the things that maybe are not as effective for you and deselect those so that you can put in something else. So this is absolutely important this time of year to be really focusing in on that monitoring piece. Not just monitoring your continuous improvement plan, but monitoring the spending that you have for all of your federal funds. Has anybody here been through an on-site review here recently? And can maybe talk into, and I don't know that anybody is, so this is a real question, can talk into that portion of their on-site review, whether it was, that getting the stakeholder involvement, or the being able to evaluate all the programs. It comes up over and over and over in the on-site reviews. Joni, I see that you unmuted.
Yeah, Shelby went through one last year, and true to what you just said, those are the areas that we had to really tighten things up for those program evaluations and stakeholder involvement. So it's a struggle, but we're doing it. The stakeholder involvement is the biggest struggle.
Joni, what are you what are some of the things that are you writing your compliance action plan now, or have you already done that and you're actually working on putting it in place?
Yeah, we've submitted it. We incorporated what we were calling roundtable family events, and they're not your typical family nights, but they're actually just for the parents. And that's where I've been able to get their input on a few things. They started out really small, but now they're beginning to grow. So I've had three, I've got one more yet this spring.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for sharing. Anybody else finish up with an on-site review? Oh, Pam?
Tony, yeah, this is Pam Suter from Holland. We got, yeah, same same experiences. I'm interested, Joni, in your roundtable. Did you do that at the district level, or did you have building meetings for that? How did you enact that? We don't have we do get stakeholder input, but not about what Dave just talked about. Like, we don't sit down and say, this is how we use the money. What are your thoughts? So what have you done?
Yeah, Pam, that's exactly where we were at too. We've done them in building specific. So we gathered elementary families, and then I did it over in the middle school. And now we'll go back over to the elementary and the middle school. I think if I did it again, I would try to combine them, but both programs are so different that we kept it building specific this year.
And did you do it kind of like a restorative circle type situation, and just anyone who wanted to talk, or how did you facilitate? Did you have some prompts to get that started?
Yeah, I had some outcomes and agenda items, and then it was a small enough group, the first one, so it was really manageable. We just did a lot of round robins, and we did a little bit of norm setting at the beginning. The next one I've got planned is more of a carousel activity, where I'm going to have some posters set up, and it's going to be a little bit more casual.
And I'm sorry, but my last question is, did you incentivize parents to get there at all? Did you were like, hey, this is all part of, hey, meals are served, or I mean, I don't even know if it's allowed, but I'm just wondering, like, what was their, how did you get them there?
Late snacks, and I really made a lot of phone calls And I did not get a lot of people on the first one. It was a small crowd, but just getting on the phone and calling people and making leaning into those relationships, building those relationships, I should say. And then I relied on the building principals as well because they know the parents better and they gave me a place to start. I sent flyers home, with QR codes, but that did not yield many people. It was the phone calls.
Thank you so much, Joni.
Yeah. Thank you, Joni.
Um, Joni, this is not required, but if you had an agenda or maybe a sample presentation, could you email that to me? And if you're comfortable, and if so, then I might just plug it into our notes here for folks to take a look at. No need to even respond. But like if that does sound like something you would be interested in, just you could email that to me or even drop it in the chat, either one. Thank you for that. Really appreciate it. So just kind of continuing into this, like what are the sorts of things that I'm thinking about this time of year to be ready for the end of the year and for next year. I still get questions about my KIP, like how do I submit it? When is it due? Things like that. And so I did put in here just some of the requirements. So PA 25 is the thing that governs what we're supposed to do. It's not, I think they're going to be changing it. It's not getting a lot of attention to some of the pieces that are required in it. But basically what it says is that we need to make available to the department a copy of our 3 to 5 year school improvement plan no later than September 1st. So the practical or the legislative deadline is September 1st. And the way that we make it available to the department is that our full plan is in our portfolio. So there is no submit button. You just, by having your plan updated and in your portfolio, that means that you have made it available to the department. And September 1st is the deadline for that. I think a practical deadline is to try to have it done by June 30th, because we're supposed to have we're supposed to be using our continuous improvement plan and the continuous improvement plan process to do all of our planning for the next year. So I think a more practical deadline is that July 1. If those of you that have been around for a while might remember when we were in Assist that when we submitted our consolidated application, the OAS consultant would look at each of our line items and look for a corresponding thing in our Assist continuous improvement plan. They don't do that anymore, but the things that we're asking for should be available. The ways that we're asking for our funding, we should be able to make some sort of connection back to our continuous improvement plans. So a practical deadline of June 30th, but a hard deadline or a legislative deadline of September 1st. So then it's like, what's supposed to be in our plan? I do still get questions like, are we supposed to have an ELA goal and a math goal, or do we have to have 3 goals or a specific number of goals that we're supposed to have? There's not. It's just that we're supposed to have a full and completed plan. We have a lot more autonomy about how to write our plans. There are legislative requirements, but frankly, nobody checks on them. So this was back in the Snyder era. There was a big push for career readiness. And there were a lot of requirements around career readiness. If you've ever read PA 25, I just have it linked here. It lists 11 requirements, and most of them had to do with career readiness. And that's not enforced. But I still encourage everybody to take a look at that and see what those requirements are, and to see if in some way, shape, or form that you're addressing career readiness in your plans, I think would help you feel comfortable that you were meeting the legislative requirements of it. And then the other question that I get that I didn't really address here, I'll just address it verbally, is are they supposed to redo the data story every year? The way that I think about the data story is our plans are supposed to be 3 to 5 year plans, and your data story should be written as your comprehensive needs assessment for that 3 to 5 year plan. So you do not need to go back and redo your data story every year. if you have new data that you want to put into the plan, that should really be done in the monitoring section. So this obviously isn't a MyKIP PD or anything like that, or a training session, but I do see people going back and updating their data stories every year or making new plans every year. You just don't have to do that. So do your comprehensive needs assessment one time for your full 3 to 5 year plan, write the whole plan, implement it for the next 3 to 5 years, and use the monitoring section to upload any new data. So it's like, okay, we're going to upload our new state assessment data, put that in the monitoring section. We're going to upload our new Acadience data, put it in the monitoring section. We're going to upload our new behavior data, put it in the monitoring section. Don't go back to the data story. The data story is there to kick your plan off and to be your comprehensive needs assessments for that whole plan. So that's just a couple of tips that I have around kind of what should be happening this year with continuous improvement. But yeah, you don't have to submit the plan, but they are supposed to be done and available and updated and ready for the MD to take a look at by September 1. Let's see here. Oh, I saw Dina put a question in the chat or a statement. I'm also interested if we are allowed to offer virtual as an option for input meetings. I have heard conflicting input on this area. Absolutely. You can for sure do virtual for that, synchronous or asynchronous. The important thing is to just get it documented. So just like with a regular meeting, you're going to want to say, like, what was the agenda, who was there, and what was talked about. And so if you can accomplish that in person, you can accomplish that virtually. The resources that I have around the virtual Title I parent meeting are an example of even doing that asynchronously. So yeah. Yep, virtual is totally fine. All right, a few other items to cover, and then we'll get into roundtable. Private schools. So we're in March. So at this point, we should have sent our private school letters. That should happen in February. So if you're a little bit behind on it, don't throw your hands up and not do it. Just send them now. So, and that means for our in-district, any private schools we have in our district, and then searching for any districts or any private schools that are within 25 miles of our district. 25 miles is the guidance that we get from MDE on that. We've talked about before in the EEM, 25 is not an option. So what I do is I put in 30 miles into the geographical search, and then it will tell me how many miles away that is, and then I can delimit it from there. Oftentimes, central offices are kind of centrally located in a district, and 30 miles really is hitting them, that private schools that are 25 miles from your district boundaries. So I'd say if you do that 30-mile radius and then just make sure that you're hitting anything within 25 miles, you're probably in pretty good shape. I do have where you go for that geographical search in the EEM. There's a really great guidance document. It's very detailed that was put out by MAS FPS. Laura is a guru around working with private schools. Great guidance document there. I have a quick start kind of one pager about how to, when it has to happen and how to limit it down so that you're making sure you're getting with the private schools you need to get with. And then all of the sample letters, consultation forms, all that kind of stuff that you need to use are on the MDE webpage. There's really not any reason to not use what the samples are. When you have an on-site review and you show them that you're using their language to do all the outreach and that sort of thing, that will make your on-site review a little bit easier. And no matter what, though, you must use the consultation forms. And although it makes absolutely no sense to me, I am here to report that all those consultation forms must have live signatures from a pen on them. So electronic signatures are accepted for everything else in the world, but they are not accepted on those consultation documents. So in some way, shape, or form, you're going to have to sit down in a live setting with the private schools. You could have your meeting virtually, but they're somehow going to still have to figure out how to sign it in person, because if you don't have a live pen signature on the page, when it comes time to do our the monitoring on that, when we have to submit all of our documentation, that will not, I mean, I'm not sure what'll happen. They're going to take away your birthday. But we're supposed to have, real signatures on all those consultation forms. Any questions about private schools before we move on to the next item?
I have a quick question. So if you sent out of district letters to out of district private schools, and you're receiving back that none of those districts want to receive the funding, do you still have to have them complete the consultation form?
Yeah, great question. You only have to complete the consultation form if they say yes and you sit down and have your consultation.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yep, you got it. Yep, don't have to drive around all the private schools and get signatures on that. So yeah, and even your outreach to the private schools can be electronic. The way that I do it, I run consortiums here on the west side of the state. So I run consortiums for Ottawa and Muskegon counties, and all of my initial communication and yes, do you want to participate and all that kind of stuff is all done electronically. And that has passed all of our on-site reviews. So it's totally fine to send physical letters and ask them to mail you back and all that kind of stuff. But you can also use electronic communications to do all of that. Any other private school questions? All right. So just real quickly, I'm not going to dig too deeply into 31A. We talked about it pretty significantly at the last meeting. But one thing that I don't think that I had ready at the last meeting was there are some updated services. If I did already talk about this, you guys can tell me. There are some updated services that or updated ways we can use the funding this year. So I had a meeting with Dawn Carmody, and so we kind of went through all this is the language that is in that's in the annual program fiscal report. And so when we get into those different sections, and so I had her help me make any language changes, and then also if there's anything new or anything removed. And so you can see there's anything that's in blue are some changes. And then anything that's highlighted in this yellow color is new. And then anything that's in red was removed. So, so basically they just did some clarifications around English learners, that it all has to be supplemental. So we still, just like our language assistance programs say, we have to be teaching the kids how to speak English out of our general funds. But 31A can be used supplementally for English learners during the day or for extended day, extended year programming. So they just wanted to, they changed the language to say supplemental English learners during the day, a supplemental English learners extended day school year. So that's one just change. Interestingly, they did put in some items about transportation. So before, transportation was not explicitly listed for extended day, extended school year, but you can use 31A to bus the kids to your after school programs or bus them to your summer school programs. And so that's explicitly in there now. And this one is for sure new. Transportation to school of origin excess costs for homeless students is now in the legislation and as an allowable expense. So I thought those were a couple of interesting changes. They changed just how some of the headers are going to work in the APFR. They also, I think this is a great change. They changed certified behavior interventionist. So that might have led people to think that you'd have to have your BCBA or something like that in the past. They changed the language of that to behavior interventionist or specialist. So I know a lot of people were kind of already doing it for that area, but that is, I think, a good change in the language for that. Security, they clarified that it's school security personnel. And so I think a lot of people were like buying cameras and things like that. and charging it all to 31A. So they clarified that that's for school security personnel. And then another item that's here is you are now, our homeless education liaison is an eligible 31A expense. So if you wanted to use your funding for that, I would probably recommend reaching out to your area's consultant. So like for our area, it's Dawn Carmody. Is I should say for our area over here on the west side of the state. I know that not everybody is over here on the west side of the state. But a lot of times if you're thinking about putting personnel in there, it is good to just double check to see that you're following all the rules that the 31A team would want you to follow. So if you're thinking about using that, using 31A to pay for your homeless liaison, I'd recommend just reaching out and finding out the right way to do that. A couple of items that have been removed. They took out dental screenings. I don't know why. I don't know if nobody was using it for that or whatever, but they took dental screenings out. And they also took out school nurse as a header. But she said that if you are using that for school nurse, that you would that would fall under the school health clinic area. So anyway, those were some of the changes that are in the legislation this year. The APFR is going to have these categories in it. So I know this is pretty late to be maybe learning some of these things, but again, in the vein of like starting to think about next year and thinking about what our budgets look like and where we might be able to pay for some certain things, and also knowing that we might be getting more 31A funding where some of our other funding is flat. These are all considerations that that's always in that calculus of during budget time. So I saw a couple questions come across in chat. Do you have to do a consultation if they say yes, but have no students from your district? No, but I would for sure get back with them. So basically the way it works, you sent your letters out, they responded and said yes, then you send them your address worksheets and say, okay, fill this address worksheet out. They fill it out, they send it back, and there's no students that generated any income, right? Maybe they didn't attend your Title I schools, or they would have attended the Title I schools, but they were not low income. So no students generated funding. You need to get back with that private school and document a conversation that says, hey, I reviewed your address worksheet and none of your students generated funding. So you don't need to fill out a consultation document for that, but you do, what I would suggest would be a phone call explaining it, and then an email following up to them to that effect. And then you can maintain that email as documentation. And then Mark asked, how do we get a recording of the webinar? So after our meeting's done today, I put the link to the recording at the top of our agendas. And I also email that out to the whole group as well. Okay, 31A. Any specific questions about 31A? At our last meeting, we went over how the opportunity index bands work, where you can go to find out your allocations on the state aid payment webpage. So we kind of dug into that last time. If you want more detail about that, you can look at our last meeting's recording, but I did link those in there again. Okay, this one's real quick. The 104H benchmark assessments. So this is the reimbursements that we can get for NWEA, iReady, or STAR. So the application is already closed on that. So there was a pretty lengthy article about this in the most recent Spotlight. So I linked the Spotlight in there. It's on page 4. And essentially, if you've done everything right, and if you go in, or your business office goes in and completes the final budget on the timeline that's established, which is by June 12th, then you'll be able to your district will get your reimbursement. So I really recommend taking a look at page 4 of the Spotlight and maybe shooting that over to your business official to make sure everybody's on the same page about what has to happen to finish that whole process up. And then the last thing on my agenda is the spring workshops. So I did put Team 2's information on here. That's the only one I have right now. I asked if they have a statewide list out yet. They always do eventually get a statewide list out. It's not out yet. So I do know what Team Two's dates are, so I put those in there. I did not hear that any of these Team Two ones are being planned as virtual, but there are always virtual options. So if you're kind of out in the boonies and don't want to travel to one of these, there's going to be there are going to be virtual options. I just don't know what those are yet. So I think these dates are established. They just aren't published yet. So if you are not in Team Two, if you contact your consultant, your OES team consultant, they should be able to tell you when and where those are happening and if any of them are going to be virtual. And so it's going to be similar to some previous years where they're really going to be digging into the consolidated application and Nexus. So that was the last thing that was on my agenda. I saw there was a question about security personnel, including school resource officers. There was something about that, some sort of guidance about it. I don't want to misspeak about this one. Does anybody have something solid about this school resource officers and security? I think I know, but I don't want to give incorrect information. I will tell you what, I'm going to follow up about that one. I want to say that yes, you can use them to pay for a district's portion of a school resource officer, but I want to say that there was some specific guidance around it that I am not remembering right offhand. I didn't hear anybody else chiming in either to say one way or the other. So I'm going to follow up about that, and I'm just going to put that in the roundtable as a note. And then when I get an answer on that, I will put it in there. I'm going to make a prediction. So I'm going to ask Dawn Carmody this, and I think she's going to say something along the lines of, as long as the school did a needs assessment and that putting a school resource officer in place met the intent and purpose of 31A and was at service to their at-risk students, then they can use it. That's my prediction. So let's see how close I am with my prediction. But I will ask Dawn Carmody that. So I'm going to put that in as a roundtable question.
Dave, this is Joni again. I did get some information from Joan Jackson,
Okay.
31A for a school resource officer. And 50% of the students were determined to be economically disadvantaged, aligned to the comprehensive needs assessment. The SRO responsibilities are not administrative in nature and would not be funded. And we have to have a job description. And she also emphasized the learning component, having them be actually in the classrooms doing some learning.
Yeah. That aligns with what I have heard about that as well. I don't think that 50% situation was that a little bit older guidance, or was that new?
February 18 of this year.
Interesting. Okay, I didn't think that 50% situation still existed. So I'm gonna still ask Dawn the same question. So my guess is that yes, it's going to be allowable. And again, as long as it aligns with your needs assessment, that you have a job description, that it's non-administrative, all that kind of stuff. I think that's going to be our answer. But I'm curious about that whole 50% thing, because I think that was explicitly removed, but I'm going to double check.
Hi, Dave. This is Stacy. Just talking about the benchmark reporting. If I look at that article, it does say that there will be final award amounts loaded into Nexus when they're approved, and we should receive an email saying that it's open and modifications will need to be submitted. And at that point, then we need to put in our final budget. So there's nothing we can do right now until you receive an email that it was accepted and modifications are required.
Okay, I'm going to add that in there. Thanks, Stacy. It doesn't appear to be open now, but we're going to get notification when it does. Is that like the short?
Yes, and then the final budgets do have to be entered by June 30th.
June 30th, yeah, okay. or final allocations. All right, thanks, Stacy. Okay, round table. So we have a lot of people here from a lot of different jobs. And hopefully this has been a time that we've been able to work together to either get questions answered, or if none of us know the answer, to at least feel comfortable that the answers don't exist quite yet. So at this time, we're welcome to either put questions in the chat, or you can unmute and ask the questions out loud.
This question was put in the chat, and you may have already answered it, so I
Okay.
apologize. But I'm curious as to where we can receive the recordings of these specific sessions.
Yeah, so after we're done, I put the recording up onto YouTube, and then I put the YouTube link right where it says sign in. I changed that to session video, and I put that up at the top of the agenda. And then I send an email out to my whole email group from anybody that's ever attended this with that. So if you're ever able to not make it, I do send an email out afterward with a link to our agenda, which has the video on it.
Awesome, thank you. And
Yeah.
then I did have something to add. It's not really a question, but from our previous meeting, we discussed the dyslexia law and 35N grant, and kind of the gray area in terms of how that's going to be enforced. And from my research and conversations with other curriculum specialists, it seems as though the state is really focused on differentiating between the two. Like 35N grant is just that, a grant that you can apply for tier 1 curriculum, while Public Act 146 and 147 specifically talks about the stipulations. And so again, I'm not 100% sure on this, and I'm going to attend a dyslexia summit this upcoming Friday through my MTSS TA center, and hopefully they'll be able to clarify it. But it sounds as though you're not required to purchase any of the curricula that is on the approved list. Those are just verified to have the elements of the science of reading. Public Act 146 states that schools or LEAs must have a curriculum that is based and rooted in the science of reading. How they're going to enforce that, I'm not sure still.
Yeah, maybe it's that parental reporting mechanism.
I'll add on to that. I'm from Byron Center, and so we've been asking a lot about this, about if you use something that's off the list, but you also use something that's on the list, do you have to notify families? And we're getting a mixed message on that, depending on who you talk to.
Yeah. I would expect that the dyslexia, okay, if I'm wrong about this, come back and tell me and I'll own up to it later. I don't expect that the Dyslexia Summit is going to have a lot of answers for us. I think that the Dyslexia Summit is MDE fulfilling its obligation to teach the state about dyslexia. I don't think that they're going to be using that as a guidance opportunity. If I'm wrong about that, I hope I'm wrong about it. But that's kind of how the last Dyslexia Summit went. And that's when I reached out to the literacy team and asked them to do the breakout session at the upcoming MAS FPS conference. Like I asked and I said, please don't come and tell us about dyslexia. Like we're going to the Dyslexia Summits, we get it. What we need to understand like what are our obligations and our responsibilities and what's the difference, between these different pieces of legislation. Like, so I'm really hoping that they're able to have that as some clarifying pieces, because it's just a whole lot of like, I mean, I don't know, when there's uncertainty, that is a huge distraction for us. And right now that level of uncertainty is very high. I would actually write down in there that specific question if you're doing something on and off the list, but I don't think anybody has the answer for it. So I think the answers are going to have to emerge.
This is Stephanie from Byron Center again. I have one more question.
Sure.
It's been on my list of to-dos. There's a requirement for completing a requirement for anti-bullying through GEMS. And I was just wondering, my understanding is we have to post something on our transparency page, and I didn't know if you might have a sample of that you'd be willing to share.
I personally don't have anything about that. Anybody else have knowledge about that or have worked on getting anything like that put into place that they could share?
I can share. This is Jennifer in Huron Valley. We just have it. We don't have it posted on our transparency page. We have it posted as a tab on our website, and it's just the board policy for anti-bullying. I did reach out this year because I kept getting the reminder to resubmit or put it in GEMS. And we do not need to resubmit every year, only when it changes. So, but we have used board policy, and it is very clear on our website where it is.
Great, thank you.
So I'm putting under our notes that GEMS only needs to be updated when your policy changes. Did I understand that correctly?
After the initial one is submitted, yes. That was my understanding. I do have an email with that in there as well.
And then your anti-bullying policy meets the requirement for what should be posted on your webpage.
We have not received any feedback that it has not. This is our board policy.
Yes, I agree. It only has to be resubmitted when you update it, but any Neola clients that did have an update in the fall Neola update. So all of those districts will need to resubmit in GEMS Mars.
So after the initial GEMS upload, only need to update GEMS when the policy changes, your anti-bullying policy appears to meet the requirements for a transparency link. And then we also heard that Stacy, Neola had a recent update to this. And so people should look to see if they need to do an upload.
Yes, our anti-bully policy was in their fall updates. And so that we want to, districts may want to look to see if their policy was included in those updates as well and if changes were made.
All right, excellent.
Dave, this is Lori Lee, and I can speak back to, I don't know if we've talked about like 164K compliance, but it speaks a little bit to that idea of what if you use something that's approved and not approved. So we were asking, like, if somebody uses something that's not on the approved list, or something that is on the approved list, like UFly, but they're using it during their intervention and not during their tier 1 time.
Yep.
Then they didn't have to put out a tier 2 list. And so it was only evaluated as a tier 1. So that wouldn't be in compliance if they're using it as a tier 2.
Yep.
When it was approved for tier 1. So that's the only thing that we've kind of heard about, using things that are on and off the list.
So what you're saying is if they're using UFly, which is not a, I guess, a comprehensive literacy program, right? It's specific to one area of reading, but did somehow get approved to the tier 1 list.
Mm-hmm.
But if people are using it for intervention or for tier 2, that does not meet the requirement for
right
the science, science of reading based in a curriculum.
Yeah.
Because it's not being used for tier 1.
Right, because it basically said the dyslexia law didn't require to establish a tier 2 list. Therefore,
Right.
if they use a tool, not necessarily just U5, but use a tool that was evaluated against a criterion specifically designed for tier 1,
Yeah.
if the district is using it for tier 2, the district is out of compliance with that.
Okay.
And if that's the case, then they have to do the notification to parents. Is that what we're saying?
That
Use it for tier 2?
I think I don't want to speak out of turn, but to me, it sounds like if that was what you were using as your compliance tool off of the list, but you were using it in an intervention instead of your tier 1.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
You see what I mean?
Lori, I had heard that too when I reached out and asked, and that answer has been consistent, which has been good. But the scenario we can't get an answer on is if you use UFly as your tier 1 in select grades like K through 2, but then you use something at 3-5 or across K5 for comprehension that's not on the list, then, are you exempt from communication or things like that? So, yeah, we got the same answer on the tier 2.
Yeah, that's a great clarification, Stephanie. Thanks.
Yep. Yeah, so I am gonna write down that piece about if we're using items that are on and off the list, do we still have to notify parents? And I think that example that you just shared about like, yep, we're using UFly at K1 and then I don't know, something that's off the list on, for 3-5 or whatever, like did that meet the requirements, did it not meet the requirements? I don't think that we have consistent answers about that one yet, but I'm just gonna put it on the list and we'll keep that in mind as questions that still need to be answered.
Has anyone heard of any further information about an update on the valid and reliable assessment screeners? I thought they were supposed to update that this month. It may be later this month. I'm not sure.
Any other info on that one? I don't have any specific information on that.
That's not out.
Not out. Okay. So like are you talking about like a new round where they're able to get like other companies could apply for that?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So that's not that is not completed yet.
From what I understand.
Okay.
Which there's only 2 options currently.
Just making a note that valid and reliable screener is the new round of vendor proposals is not completed yet, is kind of where that seems like we're at right now. Okay, so I'm seeing some activity in the chat here. 27H updates for round 2. It appears they delayed the application for a month from the original plan. Anybody have any additional information from that, or Sharon, were you communicating that's not out yet, or were you asking the question about that?
No, I just had been following the schedule, and it looked like March. I think they moved it to April. I just wondered if there was any reason for the delay. We were denied the first round, so we're hoping to try again.
Anybody have any additional knowledge around 27H, maybe why that got pushed back? Okay. Like I said, sometimes it's nice to know that nobody else has the answer. Speaking of not quite having the answer yet, Amber White, then you're reporting about the 31A transparency reporting. The documentation is still there. There's still no guidance specifically around that. In talking with Dawn Carmody about it, it sounds like it's going to be the sorts of things that they're wanting us to do are similar to the sorts of things that we're doing for Title I. And so that would be things like, making sure that the parents understand the amount of funding that we're getting, that they know how we're using those resources, that they have input on the program. So, but there's not any solid guidance on that. I'm hoping that Dawn will, when Dawn comes and does our presentation at our conference here in a couple weeks, I'm hoping that she addresses that. I'm going to be getting with her ahead of time, and I will see if she will for sure address it, even if the answer at this point is we don't have any official guidance yet. Let's see here. Okay, it's just a few additional kind of follow-ups on some of the things we've talked about so far. All right, we are actually over at 10:30. Sorry, I didn't realize that we went over a little bit. I am going to just officially close the meeting out. I'm going to go ahead and stop our recording. I'm able to hang out for a few minutes if anybody had any specific things that they want to talk about. So I'm going to go ahead and stop our recording.